to conspiracy cold cases. During this part of the show, I'm going to teach you guys all about turn of the 20th century anarchy. When I say anarchy, people typically think of teenagers on skateboards with red hair, spray painting dumb things on benches, ruining the steps with their skateboard wax so that old people fall when they're leaving the pool. But did you know that back before the Sex Pistols, anarchy was a real thing? It was a popular political party at the time. Howard Leon Czolgosz, a crazy person in Ohio, and he's crazy. He is out of his mind. He's like mentally ill. He's been a loner and an outcast his entire life. And he was maybe dying of a respiratory illness, right? He just sits on this ranch that his parents own. And he doesn't work there. He just reads about anarchy and sits by himself. That's all that this guy does, right? So how does a guy like that get connected to Errico Malatesta, Italy's most notorious anarchist? So Errico Malatesta, he had this newsletter called La Questione Sociale, or however you pronounce that correctly. Leon Frank Czolgosz, he started trying to reach out to other anarchists around May of 1901. This is a few months before the McKinley assassination. There's a popular anarchist writer named Emma Goldman. Some of you who have gone to college may have heard of them. Some of you who haven't gone to college are probably in my crew. So she's this very famous anarchist writer at the time, and she's giving a lecture in Cleveland. And he shows up, and he asks her all these like weird questions. It's a very brief exchange, but he just basically like seems very odd. On July 12th of 1901, Leon Czolgosz just shows up at the home of another anarchist writer named Abraham Isaac. Okay? He shows up there looking for Emma Goldman, who he briefly met once while she was like shaking hands with fans and signing books. You know what I mean? It wasn't a meaningful interaction. And he claims his name, he claims that his name is Fred Neiman, which translates to no man. And then he starts asking all these questions about how he can get into like the inner circle and start really doing the important work. You know, he basically shows up at this guy's house and is like, "Is Emma Goldman here? My name's John Doe. Tell me your secrets so I can help you kill someone important." Not a great first impression. Abraham Isaac certainly remembered it well, because he himself, like Malatesta, had his own popular newsletter, anarchist newsletter, that was based out of San Francisco. So Abraham Isaac, he publishes, I almost said posts, like it's Twitter. He didn't post. He published in his anarchist newsletter on September 1st of 1901 that Leon Frank Czolgosz was a spy and he was not to be trusted. And if you were an anarchist and he approached you, you should treat him with caution. So Abraham Isaac publishes that in his newsletter. It goes to a ton of people all over the United States. And so this is where the connection to Errico Malatesta comes in. Because Leon Czolgosz knows that Malatesta is the one deciding who gets assassinated and when. Because it's been reported in the newspapers when the Umberto I assassination happened. Right? They found out that Malatesta is the one who decided to do it, that Bresci was the one that carried it out, and that Antonio Lana and a third man named Quintavalle helped in with the plotting, right? So that's easy for him to find out. He just sits there reading about anarchy all day. There's nothing else. Leon Czolgosz sees that Abraham Isaac publishes this article about him in his newsletter. Now, it's completely reasonable for him to think that Abraham Isaac is doing that as an extension of Errico Malatesta, and this is why. Because Abraham Isaac would, at times, publish Malatesta's writings in his own newsletter. So so there's a guy who feels very much like an extension of Malatesta, who 5 days before the McKinley assassination publishes in his popular anarchist newsletter that Czolgosz definitely read, saying, this guy's a spy, he's not serious, he's not an anarchist, do not trust him, right? So that's why he's going to that's the driving force behind the propaganda by the deed theory, is that Leon Czolgosz wants to prove a point to Malatesta. Who the hell is Malatesta to tell Leon Czolgosz he's not a real anarchist? Malatesta's not killing anybody. He's sitting back in his ivory hovel. Just hey, why you know what, Carbone Speranio, you're not good enough. We're gonna have somebody else kill Umberto first. He's an anarchist bureaucrat, right? That's what it seems like from the perspective of someone like Czolgosz. Now when Isaac publishes that he's a spy, I think that could send him off the edge, right? So that's propaganda by the deed theory, right? He's trying to prove a point to Malatesta. There's two more quick theories before we get to the truth. I don't like them as much, so they're honorable mentions, so we're going to run them down real quick. The third theory is called the prison murder theory. In 1899, Italy had outlawed the death penalty, so Gaetano Bresci couldn't be executed. So they put him in Santo Stefano Island Prison. Santo Stefano Island Prison was started in the 1600s by the Spanish Bourbon dynasty. It's just this island prison that was specifically used to house political prisoners. That's the whole point of this island prison. All the way from 1600 until 1965 when it finally closed, right? So Gaetano Bresci gets put in this prison. And while in prison, he gets... I mean, they said it was a suicide. They found him in his cell. They found him in his cell and he was just hanging there by a towel. And they're like, well, he obviously committed suicide. Except for no one believed that story, even then. And think about how stupid people were. 1900. You know what I mean? That was a long time ago. People are not smart. For example, 2 years before that, when the Empress of Bavaria got shanked, they took her to a boat! That's basically the theory, is that LB stands for the initials of whoever murdered Gaetano Bresci in prison. Okay? And I wasn't able to ascertain who that would be because, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to get the prison roster and employment records of Santo Stefano Island Prison from the turn of the 20th century. It was very, they weren't impressed by my little video. And then the second honorable mention theory is the Louis Babcock excuse theory, aka the Kennedy theory. Now, as we all know, Lyndon Johnson had a French sniper assassinate John F. Kennedy. Everyone knows that. I'm gonna tell you. Y'all get it. So the Kennedy theory basically goes like that. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt. There's one person in the audience that's still coming to terms with that last joke. So the Kennedy theory goes like this. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt has Louis Babcock, the Grand Marshal of the Pan American Exposition, organized the assassination of William McKinley so that Roosevelt himself can take over the Oval Office, right? That's basically how it goes. And then Louis Babcock, as the Grand Marshal of the Exposition, is in a unique position to decide who the security team is and where they're at, and he can position everything, and he can make sure that Czolgosz can get in there undetected. So maybe, in this theory, George Foster's not a racist who hates black people and is racially profiling James Parker. No, he's just using racism as an excuse to help kill the president. And we thought he was such a bad guy. Right? So that's basically essentially the Kennedy/Louis Babcock excuse theory, is that Czolgosz puts LB onto the pistol as a final clue to implicate Louis Babcock because Czolgosz maybe doesn't really want to do this. And so Louis Babcock comes up with that terrible story about, well, I just wanted to be able to tell my grandkids that my initials are on the gun that killed the president. Makes no sense! No sense! So that's the Louis Babcock excuse theory. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to tell you why McKinley was assassinated. I'm going to tell you who decided Czolgosz would be the one to assassinate him. And I'm going to tell you goodbye, because it's the final segment. So hey, stick around and check out this word from, well, not our sponsors, but someone that's going to get to advertise during the show anyway.